How you doing? I'm Todd, the appliance guy, and today we're going to do a full bearing job on this Waskamat 74. Now in this particular case, the baskets come out from the rear, and we have enough room in the back that I could actually not have to remove the machine from its base. I will actually be able to pull out the drum, or rather the basket and gable and wheel all in one motion. Okay, so I'm going to start to disassemble this drum. Basically, I'm going to take off this clip. I'm going to put my puller on. We're going to pull the wheel off first, and then we're going to start to pull the bearing housing off. Okay, so you can see we have the pulley off. Came off with no problem. All right, I can show you. This is the outer bearing, and inside here, this is the bearing housing. In this particular model, you're going to have the outer bearing in the housing, and then there's going to be the inner bearing, which is the larger bearing, is actually going to be in the gable itself, in this backing plate. So once again, you can see this play. I always tell my customers, whenever you start to get the sound of a bearing, or even if you could just get the smallest amount of play in your basket, I always tell them to shut the machine down, take it out of service, because it's only going to get worse and worse from there. And the longer you run this machine, the more it will cost you during your repair. Now, I've already figured out a way to do this bearing job for way less than most. But I just want to show you the play. This machine was let to go so long that I want to show you the play in the outer bearing. Normally when shut down, the inner bearing is the first one to have all the problem. But in this case, the inner bearing was let to go so far, this machine ran so long, you can even see the play in the outer bearing. Okay, at this point I'm going to remove the bearing housing, and we'll see what we have on the inside. Alright, we have our bearing housing off. I've tried to clean up as much of the grease as I can. Now, years ago, these were done with open bearings, as you can see here. Well, this one, the cover just fell off because it was so worn. But the idea behind this was that you'd have open bearings. This is the inner bearing right here, the one I was telling you about. And I can show you the play in this one as well. I don't know if you could see that. That's the play. So basically, if your machine, shows the first sign of play, that's the first one usually to take the hit, is the inner bearing. Takes the brunt of the problem. So this one was let to go so long that it wore this one out. Now what I've seen happen is that the machines are let to run too long, this outer bearing can actually wear the housing. And what I let the customer do at that point is, I don't charge any extra, but I give this to the customer. I let them find their own machine shop, and basically this has to be milled and sleeved, then we put the new bearing in. But as you can see, there's wear here and here as well. Go right here. Alright, I took my 3-pound mallet, and I just took basically a piece of black pipe, matches up nicely with the bearing, and I turned it upside down and I tapped this bearing out. What I wanted to show you was, we got lucky in this case. If let go on too long, like I said before, this bearing can actually wear into the housing and have to be machined. But we got lucky, and we are perfect all the way around. So all we have to do is just install the next one. Alright, I'm about to remove this retaining clip, and we're going to basically take this clip off, slip off this ring, and then I'm going to use my puller. I'm going to put the housing back on, and I'm going to use the puller to pull the whole piece up. right, we have the gable off of the basket, and you can see that even though I took it off, the inner bearing is still in the gable. Now, here's the whole idea of this. These are your seals. I don't know if you can see this. Do you need a little light on this, or we're okay?
We're okay.
All right. There are 3 seals in this particular brand. 1, 2, 3 in a row there. Can you see they're kind of mushed down and kind of messed up and everything? If you look here as well, this is where the seal seats. So this meets the seals, the 3 seals, to make to keep the water from the drum going into the bearing. So obviously this goes on like that. This collar goes and seats perfectly within the 3 seals, preventing the water to come through to the first bearing and then the second bearing. But what happens is, as the machines get older, I don't know if you can catch this on camera here. Can you see these lines? These lines are wear marks. And basically what happens is, as I run my finger up and down, you can catch your nail in these. So this piece of metal starts to break down and wear, and it basically cuts into these seals. And once that happens, it's only a matter of time. Then the water starts to leak through. Now, we mentioned before that years ago they would load these housings up with grease. As you saw, this one had plenty of grease in it. I never grease the bearings. I buy pre-greased bearings and sealed bearings. God forbid, you know, the water's coming into your bearing. God forbid the bearings, or rather the seals, let loose and oil and grease and everything got into your customer's load and ruined clothing. It could be just a nightmare.
Go.
Good job. I've removed all 3 seals. Now, we were speaking before of what you can do to basically extend the life of your bearings. Now, this is the water side of the gable, and this is the back where the bearing housing sits. This is where the 3 seals were. This is the top part. There is an actual up position of this gable. I don't know if you can see here. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up though. But there's what's called a weep hole. And as you can see, it's filled with gunk. So this is the process here. Most laundromat owners don't realize that on a regular basis they should go around, and because you can, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see this hole right here?
Yeah.
Is the light coming through there? See me covering the hole and that? So that's the weep hole. This is the outside of your, you can climb behind every one of these machines, and basically with a screwdriver, or I like to use a drill bit, and basically always clean this out. So what the idea of this is, the weep hole is, if your seals do fail, and the way the seal, you got 1 seal, 2 seal, then there's a space so as to not cover the weep hole, and then your final seal is here, and then your inner bearing is here. Now, the idea is, for the weep hole is, if the first 2 seals fail and water does start to seep in, it will actually drop out through the weep hole and not even begin to touch the final seal. But what happens is, these weep holes get full of gunk, no one ever cleans them out, and the water can't escape, and it just winds up going past the last seal, and you can see what we have here, and it ruins the bearing. All right, now when I do a bearing job, basically I've streamlined this. You can call up many commercial laundromat supply places, and they're going to try to sell you, as I said before, expensive bearing kits. I found a place in Brooklyn, New York. It's called The Big Laundry Store, and they sell exactly what we need. Now, in this case, as you saw before, I took off these retaining clips. I took off that collar. The screws are in great condition. All the clips are fine. All of this stuff can be reused. Now, of course, you know, if the machine was really in bad condition, I would review these, and if needed, we'd buy new pieces. But as of yet, these clips don't normally go bad. So that's that. The main thing we do have to change is this sleeve. As you can see, the one with the lines, I said before, it meets the seals, and this is obviously a must change. So basically, I'll be cutting this one off. You have to heat the new one up from the kit, and it slides right on. I pull this one off. I have to, I clean up the shaft a little, and once you get her up to 400 or 500 degrees, she'll slip right on. Now, other than that, the kit comes with, in this case, 3 seals, which you saw me remove before, 1 collar, an inner bearing, and an outer bearing, so a small and a large bearing. And we got lucky with this housing that it didn't have any wear and does not need any machining. So right now, I believe this is just going to need the kit. And I had the customer order that. I don't mark up on any parts. I believe he paid, I think it's $58 delivered to his home for this Wascomat 74, or $59. So basically, I just charge labor, and I do this job. I can also show you on the back of this gable. This is kind of, as you saw before also though, I took the wire wheel, I cleaned up everything in here. I showed you the weep hole that must be cleaned out. And I will be showing you in this video putting all this back together. Now, on this gable, what I wanted to show you was, I don't know if the camera could pick this up, but you see this black line? That is a gasket. Some kits, some people say, oh, you always have to change the gaskets. But of all the machines I've done, they're usually older machines, obviously. Older machines, the bearings go. I do not change this gasket. What I do is I take my wire wheel and I clean this entire circle up, actually brushing off and cleaning off all the debris. And then when I put these back together, I put a bead of 100% silicone on, and I put her back in. And to date, we haven't had a leak yet.